Okay, we are live, folks, and I know every time I come on here, I say, "Oh, we are going to be talking about something terribly important today," and today is no different from the other times that I have done that. Today, the topic of our conversation is the 9 surprising blind spots that can scuttle awesome company culture, and these are blind spots that so many great leaders have. And I don't know any leaders who have all 9, but I know so many leaders who have or who have had at least one, if not more, of these blind spots. And any single one of these blind spots can really do damage, significant and lasting damage to your company culture. So I think it's well worth some of our time to look through these 9 and give you an opportunity to enhance your company culture, to take some of the lodestones out of the culture so that you have the ability to grow and maintain the kind of momentum, build the kind of momentum that you would like to have. If you're watching this video, I probably don't have to tell you how important company culture is. Famously, we've heard from Peter Drucker that company eats strategy for breakfast, right? And another very important thinker of our time, Patrick Lencioni, has said that your company's health, your organization's health is the biggest advantage that you can have. And so any one of these blind spots can really be costing you. So here we go. Let's start with number 1, as we would, right? Number 1, this is a blind spot that I hear some leaders saying essentially they are the problem. There's a problem with the people who report to me. Why are people behaving this way? Why are the people what's wrong with the folks in my organization that they would think that this is okay? Don't I demonstrate the kind of accountability, for example, that I want people to embody? I'm demonstrating it every day. What's the matter with these people? If you're not getting what you need, if you're not seeing what you want in your company, then covering this blind spot or filling in this blind spot can be achieved by asking, how am I complicit in creating the circumstances that I don't want to see in my company? How am I complicit? What is wrong with the way I have been doing things? How can I do things differently? How can I lead differently? How can I shape my organization differently so that I can get what I want? Right? What is it that you can do? How can you be effective at getting the kind of culture, the kind of behaviors that you want? Any part of any manager's deliverables, the things that they are responsible for, and you are the chief manager of your company. If you're the CEO, your deliverables is the performance of your team. And so if you're not getting the performance that you want, then the first place to look is with you. What can you do differently? All right, blind spot number 2. These sound good. Let's go with these. What this points to is the question: are your company's core values carefully selected, well defined, idiosyncratic? Right? They're different. These are some of the things that can help to differentiate your company from other potential employers. And are they jealously protected? Right. So if you want to be able to look at your company's core values and the behaviors of the people on your team and see an incredible uh, uh, fidelity between the core values and the way that your people and as a result, the way your company behaves out in the marketplace. And if these companies are unique to you, all the better to help set you apart and to create a culture that's different, a culture that is unique. All right, so there's number 2. These look good. Let's go with these instead of being very deliberate and very protective, very protective of those values. Blind spot number 3, saying, yeah, but in policy decisions. And the question that I put to you here to go along with this blind spot is, are there places where there's a conflict between your policies and your values? This is very, very common for all kinds of reasons. I won't get into how it happens that so often company culture, company values and company policies can be diametrically opposed. So, for example, there has been more than one company that I've gone into where one of the core values is trust. And yet the company handbook is full of policies that convey the message, we don't trust you. These are policies like, you're out sick. When you come back, please bring a doctor's note, or you've been to the hospital, bring a note from the hospital to confirm and prove that you've been sick. That is not rare. That is incredibly common. That kind of policy exists in so many companies. So where are your policies, for example, communicating mistrust? And so even if you don't have trust as a core value, the policies that communicate mistrust are eroding and sabotaging the kind of company culture that you probably want to build. One where people are worthy of trust, and one where people trust the company, trust their managers, trust you in your leadership role. All right. So that brings us to blind spot number 4. And this blind spot I identify as, add that to the company handbook. I add that to the employee handbook. We've got to, and what happens is that the handbook grows and grows and grows and has more and more and more policies over time, when leaders add to the company handbook some rule against some kind of behavior that they are seeing or that they've seen that they don't want to continue to see. And it's, of course, not, I'm of course not railing against the idea that behaviors that you don't want to see in your company need to be addressed. Of course, they need to be addressed. What I'm saying is that the way to address them is by building strong relationships that allow you, and in fact are built on feedback, to say, hey, maybe you don't have a lot of work experience. Being on your cell phone while you're at work is not something that I would like to see you do. When you do that, it gives the impression that you're not focused on work, and that you're doing things with work time that are not related to making a contribution to the company. And so please don't do that. That is an incredibly valuable kind of conversation to have. However, to put that policy in the handbook makes the handbook start to sound like a school marm that is chastising people, the people who know that being on a cell phone, for example, while you're at work is not a good look, right? They feel like they're being lectured to. The people who don't know that also feel like they're being lectured to. It's just a bad, and then also, by the way, your handbook gets longer and longer and longer. So Mary Barra, for example, a quick story, Mary Barra took over as CEO of General Motors. And when she got there, the dress code was pages and pages and pages and pages long. So one of her early actions was to take that dress code and shorten it to 2 words: dress appropriately. Now, I don't know for a fact because I wasn't there, but I would bet dollars to donuts that people didn't always dress appropriately after that. What Mary Barra was indicating, not only to the people, we trust you, to the managers, we trust people, and to the managers also, we trust you, and you're going to need to have conversations with people that help them distinguish between appropriate and inappropriate. You're going to have conversations with people that set expectations. And these expectations, we're not going to be putting all of our expectations down in writing, because if we were to try to do that, it would be a never ending exercise in learning what expectations we hadn't articulated yet in writing. Oh, here's another one. Please don't walk on your hands down the hall. Better put that in writing, right? It's not safe, and it creates a liability issue, right? There are an endless number of expectations that we have of each other in the workplace, and we cannot put them all in writing. So the answer to people not knowing or not adhering to some of these unwritten expectations is not to put them in writing. All right. Number 5, the fifth blind spot that may be surprising is bring me the results. You may not make these decisions. Another way of putting this is that there is often a misalignment between the results that people are expected to bring in and the authority that they have to bring those decisions in. So one of the places that this is most easily demonstrated, the easiest place that the example that I think I could give that would help shed light on what I'm talking about. We've all called customer service of one company or another. We've all called with a problem that we have. And in call centers across the world, very often the call center reps are measured on their ability to handle a client call in a single call, right? A one call resolution in as few minutes as possible without escalating that call to the supervisor, which is why very often when you say, hey, can I speak to your supervisor? They say, my supervisor will tell you the same thing that I've told you when they haven't given you what would satisfy you, when they haven't given you satisfaction, and you say, can I speak to your supervisor? And they say, my supervisor will tell you the same thing that I did. Very often when I say, well, I'd like to speak to your supervisor anyway, that supervisor does in the end deliver satisfaction to me. So they're asked to resolve your complaint quickly without escalating, and then they're not given the authority to make the decisions that would satisfy the customer. And when there's a misalignment of expectations, misalignment of responsibilities, and the authority to deliver on those responsibilities, people are either tortured and angry, or checked out, complacent, and disengaged. And so, if you don't have that alignment, then you've got trouble. So here we come to number 6. You suck. Right? This is an intolerance. This blind spot is an intolerance of failure, and the intolerance of failure can show up in a number of different ways. It could show up at somebody makes a mistake, or somebody fails to deliver the results, even though they've made a good effort, and they are in one way or another penalized for it. They could be penalized they could be penalized by not getting another crack at that kind of project that they failed at. So, you suck at that. We're not going to give you that anymore. It could be a penalty like being demoted. It could be a penalty like having being called out and ridiculed, or having some other kind of social consequence. It may be as mild as having their manager shake their head in disappointment. The message in any case like that is you suck. It also might be as simple as taking back projects that you've delegated instead of helping somebody overcome the obstacles in their path, or saying, yes, you did not succeed at that. I would like for you to try again instead of taking it away from them. What are the things that you can learn from that so that the next time you're more successful? If you penalize failure in either of those ways, then the message that people receive is you suck, and you've got a culture problem on your hands, And that brings us to number 7. Number 7, he may be bad, but he's so good. And this reminds me of a quote from another great thinker of our time, John Amici. John Amici said, "A culture is defined by the worst behavior tolerated." Right? You can find the book, The No Asshole Rule. There are reasons that that people talk in this way about the importance of having impeccable uh, morals, impeccable ethics, impeccable treatment of one another in the workplace. If you're tolerating the intolerable, if you're hiring and or keeping people who are not congruent with the kind of culture that you're trying to build, then you have a serious problem. Behavior is contagious. People who work with jerks are more likely to be fired for misbehavior themselves than people who don't work with jerks. They're more likely to steal from the company. And these are not things that I'm making up. These are actual facts. They perform more poorly than they would or than they do as soon as the jerk leaves or as soon as the lazy bum is removed, right? Somebody who's not delivering on one way or another, whether it's performance or culture, somebody who's not delivering drags down the entire team. And I think of culture as the set of contagious behaviors in an organization or in a community. And hey, folks, all behaviors are contagious. So if you're allowing bad behavior, if you're allowing poor performance to endure, then you are telling people, you're giving people the message, this is okay. And that increases the power of that behavior or that performance's contagious power. All right. That brings us to number 8, the penultimate, the second to last blind spot that we're going to be talking about today. Everyone knows what I mean. It's common sense. So there are so many of us. There's so much around this. That common sense is a fiction, folks. Common sense comes from common experience. I don't remember who said that, but I love it. And no two of us have common experience. So what's common sense to you is not the same set of things that's common sense to me. And common sense can be diametrically opposed depending on your cultural experience, where you grew up in the world, where you grew up in the country, where you grew up in any particular city. There are cultures in our culture, in our prevailing US culture, when you meet somebody, you make eye contact. When your boss tells you to do something that is going to be a catastrophe, you say, hey, boss, I'm concerned about this impending catastrophe. There are cultures where you don't do that. You don't speak up to your boss's mistake regardless. So common sense there is a fiction. So the blind spot here is in not clearly, repeatedly, with great detail, laying out what your expectations are, and instead relying on common sense. So lay out your expectations. Repeat your expectations. Your expectations, as we talked about earlier, there are so many of them. Everybody has layers and layers and layers of what we expect, of what we would want. And so also don't expect people to know all of your expectations, probably ever. So your expectations always they never go without saying. All right. That brings us to number 9. Number 9. Yeah, well, we've got awesome people, so we've got a great culture. This is a hard one because great people, this is a hard one to grasp and grok because great people do create a great culture very often. And one of our clients, Text Expander, when the CEO hired us, what he said is, we have a great culture because we've hired incredibly well. And we also know that that's not scalable. We're expecting to grow 2 and 3x in terms of our headcount over the course of the next few years. And what we know is that great hiring isn't scalable. So they brought us in at the S-Works to help them create a system for culture. And systems scale. Systems are what we use in our businesses, where we need to have consistent results, where we need to have consistent experience, where we need to have quality control. We've got systems for hiring. We've got systems for firing. We've got systems for onboarding new clients. We've got systems for how we deliver our product or service, or how we create our product and service. Most companies, however, do not have a system of government. A system of government. That is not what I meant to say. We do not have a system for culture. We do not have a system for this is how we manage people around here. We do not have a system for this is how we think and operate together. And so, if you haven't systematized your culture, and I know that can sound kind of sterile, it doesn't have to be. If you're leaving tomorrow's culture to chance, then you are in a blind spot where your culture may be great today. It is at risk for tomorrow. Folks, I'm Aaron Schmuckler, CEO and company culture engineer at the S-Works, where we work every day to help you build a culture that is great for people, and a culture that is great for performance, great for profits. It is a misnomer. And this potentially is blind spot number 10. The idea that that a culture that's great for people, where people are happy and satisfied and fulfilled, has to be in balance with a culture where people perform. We don't think of that as a balancing act, because if you're thinking of it as a balancing act, then you're constantly kind of eroding fulfillment, or you're eroding performance. Rather, it is a marriage. Performance and fulfillment can go hand in hand if you engineer your culture in just the right way. By the way, we have an instrument that you can use, a tool that will go through these 9 or now maybe 10 blind spots and help you assess how well are you mentally organized for building and maintaining and nurturing a really excellent company culture. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this has been valuable to you, and I welcome any and all contact to talk about these things that matter so much to me, so that your team can have a fantastic work environment. And so can my daughter when she enters the workforce some 20, maybe as little as 12 years from now. I would love to see the prevailing work culture be one that you love and that my daughter would love as well. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.